What's up, everybody? It's Gavin here with NBA Real Talk. I'm here with my boy Super Mario Hoops 24. We're going to have a quick discussion today about Allen Iverson and his recent comments about if he could average about 43 points in today's NBA. Now, this struck a little bit of controversy, not too much because most people actually agreed with it. But I would say you see some of the modern day stat bros kind of disagreeing with it. So I'm going to start off this conversation by saying 43 might be pushing it. But in today's NBA, AI in his prime, the way he played and the way guys were able to score, I don't think 40 is out of the question. So I'm going to set the bar at 40. Why don't you tell me what you think?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like, I would personally say, like, it's hard to anticipate anyone, I guess, like, reaching 40 unless you're one of the premier volume scorers. And this is a guy who's, like, I believe he's third all-time in points per game for his career. So, like, it's basically like him, Jordan, Wilt Chamberlain, like those are the main three. And obviously, you know, Wilt more so had like the dominance factor, but in the like pace and space type of game, you know, guys like Michael Jordan and Allen Iverson, maybe not knockdown like sharpshooters per se, but they were more than capable shooters, especially in the mid-range. So I think like they would definitely be able to adjust to the modern day. Like we've seen, you know, other players like that, like even to an extent like LeBron, who has never seen as like a great shooter really all throughout like the 2000s and early 2010s. And while he probably still isn't labeled a great shooter, like he's a better shooter, like a better jump shooter than he was back then. And I think like guys like Allen Iverson who are that good are going to be able to do it. Like this is a guy who literally averaged like 31 points a game and won MVP with no offensive help, seeing so many double teams, playing under specific rules that the refs like sought out for him because of the way that like it basically felt unfair. Like that's basically what they're saying. So like I think given all that, especially like I said, slower game too, not a lot of help around him. If you put him today around a lot more shooters and stuff like that, maybe some would say a less effective defensive era, like I think you're definitely going to see results go up. And 40 points a game, I mean, it's possible. Like, I mean, James Harden averaged like 36, 37 a couple years ago. Embiid this season before getting hurt was averaging like 36, 37. So, like, the fact that Allen Iverson could average 40, I think he could average 40 because I think maybe in a few years from now, there will be another player that's averaging 40. So, I don't see why Allen Iverson couldn't. And guys like, you know, Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant, like, I feel like they're a little bit like all those players kind of in that mix are more than capable of doing it.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think the main thing that I saw come up that I think has most, we'll call them the more modern fan that blows their mind about this is they look at AI's old numbers and they look at those percentages and stuff and they look up at the 3-point percentage and they get caught up in that. What you got to remember is back then with the way the pace was, this guy ate on the fast break and at the free throw line. I would say in today's NBA, he could easily between free throws and fast break because you can't touch a guy at all anymore. I would even say in his era, like even though you could touch guys up, you know, after the Mouse and the Palace and stuff, his era, like the end of his era is when we saw the game not get something, but it was starting to creep towards the direction it is now. If he's in an NBA where every time he goes to the hoop, you can't touch him, and like let's say a team's having a bad night from the 3-point range, that's a lot of long rebounds that AI is either going to grab and sprint down the court with, or his outlet guy's going to hit him. And that's easily 20 plus points a game. I could envision him almost averaging just eating off the fast break and the free throws alone. I think people get caught up in the shooting percentage. And the thing is, that era, he was dead. Like he was, don't get me wrong, there's no way to romanticize the idea. He was a volume scorer. He was a shot chucker. He had to get his shots up to get his points. But people don't realize the teams that were built around him, there was a good 5-6 year stretch there where the AI 76ers were based on how do we get Allen the ball in the offensive end and let him just wreak havoc. And whether he scores, kicks it out, or just puts up a shot that his teammate cleans up on the glass. The bottom line is he was more of an offensive force than just a pure, even though he was a pure scorer, it wasn't pure scorer as in like, oh, every time he, you know, goes to the net, it results in a basket. Every time he goes in the lane, he would cause chaos and he would dominate. And I think today you don't have modern centers anymore. That mid-range is wide open, so he might take a few less of those shots, but he's also probably going to be wide open when he does take them. I just think his game, from the era it comes from, hits this modern era perfectly. And yes, He'd probably have to develop a better 3-point shot. I'm pretty sure he's somewhere around like below league average for his career. He's probably 30 to 32% or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But the court is wide open. I don't see why he can't just do his thing in the lane. And if we were to say, okay, maybe he doesn't average as many points, I think he averages more assists at least, because he's just kicking it out to shooters all night long. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you, because I think a good example actually is Damian Lillard, because when Dame was in Portland, those early years especially, like a lot of those teams were a little bit more defensive oriented from when he was really young. Then they started losing some guys. They had to kind of like re-identify their team, and they basically had one of the most efficient offenses under Terry Stotts, and then they were one of the worst defenses for several years, right? But in those years where they had like maybe one of the worst defenses, at least because their offense was more geared toward like today's play style, you saw his efficiency go from maybe like 42% for the season and maybe like 35% from three. That jumped up like maybe 4 or 5% from the field and like 4 or 5% from three. And now we look at him as one of the best shooters ever. I mean, he's a back-to-back three-point contest champion. He basically just won the All-Star Game MVP because he just nailed 2 shots from like behind half court. So like, yeah. I just think like, it's a little bit like dependent on like what team you have around you, and Allen Iverson really never had that. I think like in Philadelphia for a lot of those years. Now maybe you could argue like later on with Denver, like what's the excuse there? I think it's just like a little bit different, like when you're adjusting to playing alongside a guy like that, when you're so used to having the ball so much and like operating that way.
Then in his first couple of years, he was on the back end of his career, and he was still third or fifth in the league in scoring, like him and Melo, or you know what I mean, in that first year in Denver.
Yeah, like I just think it's a little bit of an adjustment, and maybe that's why too, like you're seeing like, I think Dame is also a good example because of this. Like this is his first year in Milwaukee, and you're seeing like people say, even though he was an all-star, people were saying like, this doesn't feel like Dame this year. Like a lot of people are kind of under that impression because maybe his efficiency is a little bit down. Well, he's also having to like learn where there's another guy who can play like an alpha like Giannis. And I think Giannis, it kind of ties in too with Allen Iverson, because you were saying about like how AI can really score in fast break and like draw free throws, draw fouls and stuff like that. Like that's a good chunk of Giannis's points, maybe more so to a degree like on his percentage of points of anyone that's up there near the top of the points per game in the league.
Yeah, no, and Giannis is an interesting comparison because even though they're miles apart in height, a lot of similarities in like the way they would just drive the lane. That's the way AI would play. I think another reason people are averse to this idea is they think, I mean, it's funny that they think anybody is a defensive liability in today's NBA. As far as I'm concerned, they're all defensive liabilities, but they looked at him as a giant defensive liability back in the day, which I don't think is actually totally fair. Now, like, don't get me wrong, he was nowhere near an elite defender. If he got caught in the wrong one-on-one matchup, he could totally get taken advantage of. But unlike sort of more traditional, we'll say James Harden in the past or Isaiah Thomas in the past, where they're seen as these guys who really have to produce that offense to make up for their defensive lacklusterness. Iverson was one of the league leaders in steals, and I don't see why that would really change, because one of the reasons is because he was so fast in the way he played the passing lanes. So I think he'd be a dramatically lower defensive liability than people think. And especially with today where most guys are like, there's a yin and a yang. So to just paint it like it's all sunshine and rainbows for him, I would say there is that surplus of 6'9" guys, right? We got, lineups where 4 guys are basically 6'9". So there would be that interesting dynamic he has to play around, but I don't see why he can't succeed the same way he succeeded in the past on the defensive end by just playing those passing lanes and getting tons of steals.
Yeah, I think so too, because there's like, I mean, there's even guys recently that have been like steals champs, like maybe Steph Curry, for example, who, yes, even when he won it, like he wasn't seen as a good defender. I mean, last 7 or 8 years, he's still not like really a good defender if you ask me, but you got people more so like pushing, I guess, like the narrative that he's an improved defender, and that tells me, like, because first of all, I don't see the improvement the same way as a lot of other people. I'm gonna just say that right now, but like if he's seen as an improved defender and not a defensive liability, then how can a guy like Allen Iverson, who a little bit defensively, like where their strengths are, were kind of similar. You know what I mean?
To be clear, like what I would classify as a defensive liability, it's like, remember Enes Kanter? He was like 7 feet tall.
Oh, yeah.
Could do lots of great stuff on the court, but teams would hunt him, like seek. To me, your defensive liability, if teams literally seek out a matchup to exploit constantly, not just one matchup, like they're always looking for that guy to go up against and cause a mismatch. And AI, even in his career, wasn't really that guy, even though like pretty much anybody on the court would be a mismatch for him. Is that they knew he was just always buzzing around. So to me, that's what I would call a defensive liability, is someone that the offense is going to constantly seek out to produce a bad matchup.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Like, I just think like there's so many guys, like who's really like an elite guard defender in the NBA today, you know, like
They don't exist anymore.
Yeah, like I think
Patrick Beverley pretty much, just because he fouls a lot.
Yeah, like I mean, probably the guards that Boston has. I mean, maybe a healthy Markelle Fultz,
Drew Holiday.
Like,
they do still exist.
There's a few, like if maybe, and I don't even know if he ever will, because he probably won't when he comes back from his like 3-year-long injury. But Lonzo Ball, before he was hurt, like was another one. Like, but it's the fact that you can probably name them all, like, should tell you that there's really not that many. You know what I mean? Because I bet
they
like
don't have that lore around them like they used to.
Yeah,
Like,
like
I is Tony Allen, right?
Right, like
Like,
Tony Allen.
The best players in the league didn't want to face Tony Allen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think so too. Like now it's more so like like I'm a big Donovan Mitchell fan, and I think personally like he is an actually above average defender based on the other guards in the league. However, like if you probably put his defense compared to some of those other guys back then, I don't know how it would be seen, you know, but at the same time, if you put a team around him that was as defensive oriented as what Allen Iverson had, then he's still going to thrive. You know what I mean? So I think like if you put Allen Iverson today, like I don't think that's necessarily going to be a problem. And again, like that's going to make his life a little bit easier, I think, if he's not like seeked out as much in the defensive end. I think it's going to save more energy. There's an even better chance that he can score 40.
Yeah, and if the 3-and-D is more of a thing than ever now. Back in his era, there was a couple players, but they weren't even really called that, because even if they were 3-point specialists, even the 3-point shooters from back then weren't known as like 3-and-D. They're known as just role players, right? You know what I mean? Guy who can hit a shot and play defense. So with the number of those guys you'd have to kick the ball out to, the only caveat I'd put is, okay, maybe he doesn't average a spectacularly high number, but something about his game is going drastically up, because the pace, the style, the fact, and here's the number one thing: there's so few traditional, like, who are the traditional bigs left in the league? Like Andre Drummond, you know, Rudy Gobert, you know, there's really like, who's gonna be the guy who checks him in the lane and stops him the way they used to, right? They'll get for the way they used to even just body check foul him back in the day. You're gonna get a flagrant one minimum every time you do that today. So you're giving him, you know, shots plus possession. This guy's just going to eat all night. So based under today's rule, prime AI, I'm going 40. Sounds like you agree.
Yeah, I would say he can reach 40. I don't know how many seasons he would do it though. I'll say that. Like I think he could have 1, maybe 2 seasons at 40. But I know some people define prime a little differently, like a 5-year stretch. I don't know if he'd average 40 for 5 years, but 1 or 2.
I don't know about prime. All I know is about how fast he was and how fast Luka Doncic is. And Luka Doncic just dropped 70. Yeah. So if Luka can even drop 70 in a game, a guy who runs as fast and as much as AI can average 40.
And there were 4 teams. There are 4 teams too in the NBA that are worse defensively than the team he dropped 73 on. So
even so, just the idea, like, you got to remember, like, it wasn't too long ago that sometimes games would end, you know, 79-75. So for one player to score that many points, especially at that, it's not so much just the points, and yes, against bad defense, that the type of, like, Luka still plays with a reasonably high pace, right, compared to AI's era, but guys like Luka or even Joel Embiid, these guys aren't fast, right? Guys like AI, they can literally give you 10-second possessions all night long. You know what I mean?
The team definitely matters as well. But if it was a team similar to what Allen Iverson had, like where it's like he is the offense, like I mean, Luka, I wouldn't say like Luka is so much the offense right now, but I mean that game he dropped 73, he basically was because they were without Kyrie Irving. So it's like
that's a good point.
He kind of had to be. So like yeah, and really a lot of those like these high scoring games that you see lately, like you know, Dame did it, like his team was basically terrible that last year, and then Donovan Mitchell did it, Darius Garland was out. So like you kind of, I guess you need a little bit of luck, but I'm like, I mean, shoot, if it was a team like those Sixers in 2000, 2001, like they're going to play elite defense, but I think he could go for like 70, especially if it was based in today's game. You know what I mean?
No, that's a very good point you make. That's actually one of the probably the best arguments against it is just this circumstance does have to be pretty right. And you see that with like you said, Luka. Yeah, he's got Kyrie and stuff in games like that, and games in the past where Luka, you know, rookie season and onward was getting 30 and 40 and 50-point games or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's that you have to be that guy that the entire team relies upon. So he would have to be in a situation, prime AI like he was, playing 56 minutes a night, however that works. You know what I mean? Playing all the minutes, never coming out, and being the centerpiece, the offensive centerpiece. Because today, even though we got those higher scores, you're right, it is more of this like team basketball type game. But yeah, I mean, I'm going with 40, and I think you are too.
Can you imagine if, like you said, the 56-minute thing? Now I can't stop thinking about, like, could you imagine if he was on the Knicks and like in Jalen Brunson's role and like just, I don't know, like I feel like he'd have like a lot, like, he'd be doing a lot, you know.
On sort of a side note, it's insane to me when people are like some of his critics, which is funny because none of his past critics would bring up this advanced stat, but they'd be like, yeah, his averages for his career, but they're like, he also averaged, you know, because the guy averaged like 42 minutes or something for his career or for like 10, whatever. Some
you couldn't take him out, really.
And everyone's like, yeah, you know, you're going to score a lot when you get, because everyone loves the per 36 numbers, right? And it's like, you act like it's just so easy to keep scoring when you've been playing the entire, like, you know what I mean? That's not normal to not come out of a game and still have the legs to put the ball in the net. Like, they're always like, yeah, if I played that many minutes, or if this guy's per 36 played that many minutes, it's like, you know, there's like a diminishing returns with this stuff, right?
Well, and that's why, like, I mean, not to totally change the subject, but like, I think that's why, like, the season will average like 50 points is still impressive because, like, he played 48 and a half minutes. He played more than the allotted regular season game because he also was playing overtime.
Just in the whole season, basically.
He basically didn't come out like once, but like it's impressive because like he had games where he scored 100 or 78. I think he had like a 73, 71. Like, but to do that where it's like you have more points than minutes played, and back then too, obviously no 3-point line, so like a lot more people are playing more compact and like closer to the rim. Like, there's no reason to be standing at half court because who's going to want to shoot a shot from that far if there's no 3-point line? You're just going to look dumb and you're going to get pulled out.
And that's one of the reasons, even like we said with Luka, with like where he's dropping against a bad team, I'm like, you know what? Go to your local YMCA, play with the kids, and try to drop 80. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, that's the thing. Certain things, no matter where they're done, NBA, at home, whatever, they're hard to do, right? And only a special few can do them. And AI is definitely one of them.
Yeah, I agree. I'm right there with you.
All right, guys. Well, that was a great talk. I think we got that one sorted. I think we put that to rest. AI definitely dropping 40 in today's NBA. I'm going to say for a couple seasons. What do you say?
I'll give him 2 seasons. I know I said 1 or 2, but I'll give him 2 seasons.
Yeah, there we go. Well, he could average at least 2 seasons of 40. So like, comment, subscribe below. Make sure you check out Super Mario Hoops channel. He's got a great tournament going on. Lots of entertaining, great content coming up. And as usual, we'll talk to you guys next time.